And as we always do, we start our meeting with public comment period, and we have a second public comment period at the end of the meeting. This is for members of the public to comment on anything relating to planning or zoning in the town, both periods, or if there's something on the agenda they want to comment on, please keep your comments brief. And if anybody wants to comment at this point, you're welcome to.
I don't see anybody on phone only, but no hands up.
No hands up? Okay. Well, then
No.
there might be some later.
Okay.
So why don't we move to the next item in the agenda, which is the approval of the minutes for February 4th and also for February 18th. The minutes for the 18th are quite lengthy, but I think they're generally pretty good. So looking first at the February 4th, 2021 minutes, does anybody have any deletions, additions, or changes? We did note last time that I and I are throughout is miswritten, should be infiltration I and I, not I and I, but that's easy to correct. And then there was another thing that we did talk about briefly, which is RFT. Tom on page 2 had mentioned RFTs. I'm not quite sure what that was, but
I don't remember saying that, so I don't know what that is.
do you have any idea what that is? Because otherwise we'll just leave it alone.
I can only think of it as being RFP, not RF.
RFPs, yeah, RFPs, right. Request for proposal.
Why would that
Yeah,
apply
I
to
thought of that
bylaws?
too, but bylaws are
No,
RTF bylaws. So it
Oh,
just
no, okay,
didn't
Yeah,
make a lot of sense.
that context is wrong then,
Yeah, I'm just,
okay.
let's just leave that. Is there anything else in the February 4, 2021 minutes that anybody has? to-
Yeah, I think we need a little more clarification in that paragraph just before number 4, member items.
yeah,
So the context of that is that was the opening of the bids for the DPW building.
Yeah,
And the bids, Tom, correct me if I'm wrong, I thought the low bid was $1.8 million in excess of the budget.
I think what we had at that meeting was just this bid from the subs. We didn't have the general, did we?
Oh, I didn't even draw a reference to the date. You're right.
And I
Right.
don't remember the
So-
amount for the subs.
I mean, is there, I'm looking at, this is the last part of that paragraph before item 4, Harry, is that what you're talking
Yep.
about?
Yep.
Mika states that they were over by 10% over the estimated cost, about $300,000. Corsland
Yep.
goes on, we do not have enough in revenue.
Yeah, okay. That was accurate. That particular meeting, I did question it like that.
Okay,
Let's just simplify it to say that it was over budget and not leave out the 10% and the 300,000. So it'll be
Right.
generic.
well, what's the matter with was that inaccurate, the 10%?
Because we don't remember what it was at that meeting.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think that number was, came out of a hat, so.
Well, if it is the right number, it should be applied to this subcontractor bids, and this doesn't
So
say
you want to
that.
add that? You want to add that?
You can either add that or subtract the number, either way.
Yeah,
I
I'll
would
just
say
get
the
a plan.
$300,000 number has no context.
Well, it's actually
Doesn't tie out to anything. 300,000.
so, okay. Let's not spend a whole lot of time on this, because,
Yep.
but what do you think it should say?
I think it should be simplified, just that the cost is coming in higher.
We're higher than the estimated cost. How
Yeah.
about-
Yes,
Yep.
yeah,
Yep.
that's accurate and good enough. And because it gets worse as they get to the general contractor bid.
Correct.
Yeah, no, I know that, yeah. Okay, anything else in February 4 minutes?
Other than calling a sewer line a pipeline, I guess that's okay.
Okay, all right. So motion to approve the minutes of February 4, 2021. Who wants to make that motion?
I'll move that we approve the minutes of February
With
4th as
changes.
amended.
Yeah. Motion by Harry. Who wants the second?
Tom seconds.
Seconded by Tom. So I'll take a roll call vote. Denise,
Aye.
Tom,
Aye.
Harry,
Aye.
Tom,
Aye.
and I also vote to approve. So the approve as amended 5-0. Okay, let's go to the next set of minutes for February 18th, 2021. Are there any additions, deletions, or changes that someone wants to propose to those minutes?
A couple more I and Is in there.
Yeah, right. That goes without saying.
I'm going to abstain from voting on these minutes because I missed a large portion of the meeting.
Okay.
You can vote
Anybody
to
else?
approve the.
Otherwise, yeah, I've read them over. To me, they look pretty comprehensive, but someone else might have picked up on something.
I didn't see more.
If not, then we'll just take with the amendments to the INI. Does anybody want to make a motion to approve the minutes of February 18th, 2021, with the exception of Denise?
So moved.
Okay, Tom moves. Anyone want a second?
I'll second it.
Seconds. Roll call vote. Harry,
Aye.
Tom,
Aye.
Herm,
Aye.
and I'll vote in favor also. So approved 4-0 with the INI changes. Otherwise, it'll stay the way it is.
With one abstention, of course.
Yeah, I'm writing that down right now.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, so next item 3. This is an A&R from Margaret Perry and John Dinnes, 3 Lucia Lane. I have spoken with Tom already about this. I see one of my neighbors in the audience, Lee Royden. Hi, Lee. I'm friendly with both John and Lee, and therefore
But he's been a failure, so here he is.
I'm going to, something's happening there. John is appearing and disappearing. I'm going to recuse myself from participating in this A&R, and I have spoken about it with Tom. I did say if Tom had any kind of a procedural question, I think I could answer that. But other than that, I'm not going to participate in this meeting. So Tom, take it away. I guess the applicants need to make a little presentation about what they're doing. And
Okay, who do we have present for applicants and are they unmuted?
I'm unmuted, I think. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. So, Phil Pattison from Hancock Associates is also here. He was in charge of the surveying that was done. So there is approximately an acre behind the Perry house, most of which is wetland. It's between us and Deborah Ramsey's horse farm. And about 1/3 of that back lot is basically comes up to our back property line and 2/3 to the Perry property line. So we discussed with them that in order to, they bought it basically to preserve the back of their property from having houses built on it and things. And we're quite friendly with them. And so we discussed with them whether we could buy the 1/3 of the parcel that backs onto our property so that we don't know what's going to happen with them, you know, in the future, whoever else might acquire that. And so we had it surveyed by Phil. There is an agreement which is recorded with the Registry of Deeds between Charles Gladstone and the Perrys, which says that they won't build on that or anything other than a gazebo or something, and that it can't be used as a, and that you can't use the, you know, it as a zoning frontage for your own property, we talked with Charles. He said, well, I'm not sure that really did what we wanted to. And anyway, we might want to build something for our old age. That is a 30-year agreement with about 9 years left to go. He said that he has absolutely no objections to us buying the land and that we should come over and like have a social event with them on our porch. And we've talked to all the abutters. As far as I know, I've talked to Deborah Ramsey behind, and of course the Perrys who want to sell us the land. And you talked to
Richard
Rich,
Osgood,
and also to
to
next-
Beth. Yeah.
to Beth. What's her last name? I can.
Oh, gosh, I don't
Anyway,
know.
our next door neighbor who
Neighbor, yeah.
isn't actually an abutter to the land that would be purchased, but
Is
she's.
that the Scanzini?
Yes,
Scanzini,
that's
yes.
it,
I
exactly.
see that on the map, yeah.
Yeah. So we have talked to all the abutters, and I guess Phil can fill you in on the details of the surveying, but we're happy to go. We told Charles to go in with him and the Perrys to re-sign another agreement, although our lawyer tells us that these agreements aren't actually really very binding, especially, and can't be enforced if the land is sold. So it seems a little moot, but that's where, I guess, where it stands with that agreement. And we have really no intention of building anything on there. We just want a buffer behind us. So Phil, did you want to say anything about the surveying?
Good evening. My name is Phil Pattison with Hancock and Danvers. We've identified that parcel A, as we're calling it, is not a legal building lot by itself. So that issue is off the table. The purpose is to basically combine parcel A with the rest of the property that Lee and John own. And as she explained, it's really intended to be a rear buffer. And then, the Perry property in itself is not intended to be a legal building lot as well as identified on the plan. And that basically abuts their other land of the Perrys. So it was a fairly simple subdivision of a lot that was created by a plan in 1999. So that's pretty much it. Not very complicated.
No.
Any questions from the board?
Let's go around. Anything from Denise?
I'm just curious, the property that you're buying, is that the property that's wetlands, or is that the other 2/3?
I can speak to that. One portion of that 1/3 that we're buying is a wetland. There's a perennial stream that runs along,
Disappeared.
and it's obviously wet during the rainy season. It's relatively dry during the year. And there's the Title V, which is 25 feet, I believe, or 50 feet, if I'm correct on that distance, that you can't build on. And there may be,
100 feet.
I'm
It's
sorry, 100 feet. I
feet.
should know that by heart. But then there is approximately, I'm going to approximate this, about 30 feet to that 100 buffer. That is that abuts our property and the Perrys. So that's really the only buffer there that you have that's not within Title V. It's a pretty small sliver of it.
Yeah.
Our largest abutter is Osgood, and he's to the south of us.
Okay, thank
So
you.
Our intent is to keep that open space.
Yep.
Reclaim the apple tree that's back there. Don't know why I want to do that, but in case I have some free time on the weekends, I'll be reclaiming that apple tree.
Nice.
Anything from you, Herm?
No, it looks straightforward.
Is Harry with us?
No, I just got a text from Harry. He said, we've got a power problems in the cove. I have no power and no signal.
Uh-oh.
So I actually
Well,
I had a little problem here too. My lights were kind of pulsing and, but they've stopped. But sounds like he's maybe not available to do his part of the thing tonight, which would be too bad unless it comes back on. What I think we'll do is move it, toward the bottom of the agenda. Hopefully he'll come back. So anyway, okay, enough
So
for
you
that.
have, let me understand completely. You have split one parcel into two, and you're not combining that split piece with anything. It
Well,
remains.
let me ask the board what the best course of action for us is on that, how the town perceives that. Should we dissolve that sliver, the 1/3 into a large parcel? Or should we maintain it as an independent parcel?
Well, if you keep it as separate, you're gonna get 2 tax bills for the rest of your life. So
Okay.
there's that.
All right,
But we can't create a landlocked piece of land. You have to, I believe you have to join that.
okay, that's perfect, and we'll join them. That's the legality I was looking for. I wasn't sure how the town views a landlocked parcel and how they treat that as.
Hmm.
Okay,
So do we need to redo the drawings or can it be approved pending that?
I think if you read note 4, it identifies that that is the intent of the plan is to combine it with other land to make one contiguous lot. You see that in note 4.
Oh, yeah.
That was the intent all along.
Okay.
I'm having trouble finding note 4. Is it on the drawing or is it on the application?
It's on the note, Mr. Chairman, Vice Chairman.
It's on the
Note
drawing.
4. On the plan, note 4.
I'm just scrolling around here. I've got a small screen that I'm working on this.
Yeah.
Oh, we go, notes for parcel A.
Doesn't do well with that there.
No, there's Harry.
All right, so I guess that's legally sufficient to determine its fate.
That seems fine.
Okay with that? All right, any other questions?
Nope.
Can I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second,
Yes. Okay, moved by,
Wait a second, Harry, Harry looks like he's back on.
Yep.
did you have any other questions, Harry, before we move?
No, I had looked at this application beforehand,
Yep.
and
Okay.
I didn't hear any of the presentation, so I'm assuming the presentation was consistent with the application.
That's the way I understood it. So Herm has moved and Denise has seconded approval for this A&R. Let's take if there's no further discussion, let's have a vote. So Jason is abstaining. Denise,
aye.
Herm,
Aye.
Harry,
Aye.
Tom, I think we have 4 and 1 abstention. So this is approved.
Thank you very
thank you.
much.
And Phil, thanks for all your hard work on this. We appreciate you going out here and doing this.
Quite welcome, both of you.
By the way, you're gonna, Phil, you're gonna have to bring the plans for it to be signed by the planning board members to the secretary's office.
Yeah,
And she'll have individual members come there and sign it.
yeah, Mr. Chairman, I brought the Mylar and the prints to Mary last week.
Okay, good. Then you're
Yeah,
ahead of
she-
the game.
By the way, a high caduce for Mary. What a great lady.
Yeah. I'll
You
tell
know
her
that.
I'll tell her you said that.
Oh, yeah. I got to meet her when I dropped the plans off. Thank you very much.
Okay,
Thank
well,
you.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay, thanks for coming.
Bye.
We can leave.
Okay, now we go to the next item, which is quite important for the town, which is the Massachusetts Housing Choice Initiative and its impact on Rockport. Frank, are there any selectmen in the audience on this?
No.
Okay, I guess.
Yeah, no, nobody in the waiting room, and yeah, everybody who's here is what we have. Yep.
Okay. So Harry, why don't you give everybody kind of the lowdown on what you have learned? You've done a lot, I know, on this. And have
Well, I
some-
was hoping to, share a screen, but I can't possibly do that now. But
You
there's
have
some,
power back, by the way? You obviously have power.
no,
back.
power back. So I've got to use the light that I have to get through this.
Harry, if you give me a minute, I can share my screen with your presentation.
So I'm looking for a particular file on the DHCD website.
It's not the housing choice presentation?
It's Housing Choice March 2021 is the first
Yeah.
stream.
I can share that. Hold on.
That would be great.
All right, where's the sharing thing? Oh, this is Zoom, not Teams. All right,
It'd be on your screen, Denise.
there it is.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
The cursor, yeah.
got it. Okay, there we go. Do you see it?
I do see it.
I see it too. Yep, yep. So this is, I'm gonna kind of race through this because it's getting darker by the moment here.
Okay.
So in December of 2020, Governor Baker announced the Housing Choice Initiative, an effort to create 135,000 housing units by 2025. I mean, we got 4 years to do that through legislative changes to deliver smart, effective zoning at the local level. This came about after a number of attempts, and I think what was referenced to as snob zoning in certain communities, whereby at a 2/3 voting level, initiatives were being defeated. And I think the most defeats seem to be occurring in Salem, Mass. And so the mayor there, Kim Driscoll, decided, I think she and the governor would work together somehow to make some changes. So now, instead of having a 2/3 majority, you now need a simple majority to affect certain zoning changes. How it affects Rockport.
Oops, sorry. Wait a minute. I don't know what I did.
How it affects Rockport is that Rockport is an MBTA community. So as an MBTA community, the governor really highlighted the opportunity to do some smart zoning, utilizing the various stations around the Commonwealth and in Eastern Massachusetts, and thought that, you know, if he could provide some opportunity for towns to participate in this, he would also reward them financially. So in our case, as a town of under 7,000, we're actually in a small minority of communities eligible for certain funding as it relates to some of these initiatives. And I just want to reiterate, this is law. This is not voluntary. This is now law. And it's all these legislative changes are effective immediately. Now, in my discussion with Chris Clutchman from DHCD, she mentioned to me that all communities in Massachusetts right now are deemed to be compliant, only because this legislation has not been finalized to determine when absolute compliance is going to be required. That's going to come out later on in 2021. So this is a living, breathing document, and there'll be changes coming out. So I had the opportunity to talk to Chris at length about this. You know, I think the ideal of the legislation is well-founded. Some communities have actually taken advantage of this or have actually done this on their own over the years. For instance, the city of, or the town of Concord comes to mind. But this is what, these are the key points when it comes to MBTA communities. Each MBTA community shall have a zoning ordinance or bylaw that provides for at least one district of a reasonable size in which multifamily housing is permitted as of right. DHCD issued preliminary guidance on this matter in January of 2021. The administration plans to work with stakeholders, including towns and cities, to develop thoughtful compliance criteria, something that I referred to just just a moment ago, and timelines so that the end result is good policy. This legislation, as I said earlier, requires more input and work before it is final. As it relates to qualifying amendments for simple majority vote, zoning that allows for certain kinds of housing developments will be as of right. Multifamily 3+ units and mixed use development in an eligible location. There's coverage for accessory dwelling units. And there's also the thought to wrap in open space and residential development. If you think about where our train station is located, we're not far from the Rockport Town Forest and access to Dogtown. There's encouragement for zoning that allows for certain kinds of housing development by special permit. We're talking about multifamily and mixed use development, once again, in an eligible location. Again, there's discussion about the accessory dwelling units that are not attached to the primary home. There's an allowance for increased density through a special permit process. So my research on that indicated that you could have a minimum, or you would have a minimum of 10 units per acre of land, that the zone must be of a reasonable size. It wasn't defined, and it must be within 1/2 mile of the train station. There's also a reduction allowed for parking for residential or mixed use development. And the thought there being that if you could somehow structure the development such that you had alternating times of need for parking for commercial use during the daytime, and maybe parking for residential use in the nighttime, those would be complementary. And then as it relates to zoning and dimensions, changes to dimensional standards that allow for additional units, such as determined by height, lot area, setbacks, open space, parking, things of that nature. That's encouraged. So this legislation is new. It's still evolving, but there's great emphasis on it, and there are dollars that have been allocated to it. Each year, there's going to be $10 million budgeted to for incentives and grants and technical assistance available to communities like Rockport. And so land use or use of land efficiently is a key point. Preservation of natural resources and conservation of energy also sort of falls under this smart zoning initiative. So from my perspective, I think there's going to be a fair amount of pushback from folks in town if they're not aware of this law. And it's going to be the planning board's responsibility to get out in front of this and effectively educate the voters in the town of Rockport, because this is something that's not a voluntary effort. This is something that is now a matter of law. I wasn't able to follow along, Denise, as to that DHCD presentation that you put up on the share screen.
Yep.
There is a lot of material in there.
Yep.
There was a lot of material in there. Any of the members have any questions that I may be able to answer?
Well, I think it's, one thing that I think is really encouraging for Rockport is this accessory dwelling units. Because I think there are already a lot of accessory buildings that, based on the current zoning, are not permitted as housing that could become, housing inventory. So I certainly think that's good news. And I don't know, it looks like a very good law and something that's going to make it easier for us. And I'll talk about this in the next agenda item with respect to housing production.
Yeah, I have I thought that was a very nice presentation, Harry. And I just wanted to add a couple of things. I did take a look at some of the guidance that's out there on the Executive Office of Housing and Economic Development website. And as you said, Harry, this is all very, very new. I mean, this guidance is I think, this was put out this month. But in addition to what you've already said, they, and you've gone through them all, with there's a couple of additional ones. There were 9 areas under the heading, what kinds of zoning ordinance or bylaw can be enacted with a simple majority. And they had, in addition to the ones you referred to, Harry, the multifamily housing, it's also, one of them is allows for open space residential development as of right. So that too is exempt from the 2/3 requirement. And the other thing that I noticed and I was thinking about was, well, okay, what happens when you have some other zoning provisions like what we're working on? We've got a bunch of zoning provisions that aren't subject to this one simple majority vote. In other words, they will require the 2/3 vote at a town meeting. So what you have to do, according to this guidance, is you actually separate out those provisions of your zoning changes that enjoy the 1/2, the majority, simple majority vote, from those other provisions that require the 2/3 vote. So in other words, they're not all mixed together. It could be confusing, but at the same time, you want to make sure that you want to get a separate vote for the simple majority than you do for the 2/3. So that's, that's something to look at down the line. And it's also something to look at when we get to what I put down was the setting priorities, because, this seems to be right up there, with, if we're looking at priorities, what do we do first? Because we've got a lot of stuff going on. This would probably be right up there for a variety of reasons, not the least of which is if there's some money available for doing any of this stuff, that would be terrific. So that's all I have to add.
Question,
So-
Jason.
I'm sorry. Just as follow-up to that, Jason, of course, with MAPC in the House, helping us to rewrite our zoning ordinance, this is an optimum opportunity to engage them to help us with this particular aspect. It may result in a change in scope, but even if that's required, I think we need to seriously consider that.
Yeah, I mean, it's just really fortuitous, because I think when we started this whole process, with MAPC, which was, a long process to get this contract, I certainly didn't know this was in the wings.
Nobody did.
So it's like, wow, now we've got them. They know it. They should be on top of it. And they should be working on, some of this stuff, which obviously we've talked about in the past with when Herm was chairman about the TOD. And we also, how this law changes that, I don't know. But we also talked about what you mentioned, Denise, which was the making it easy for accessory structures to be used for housing within that 1/2 mile radius, which we really never got to yet. And then also a couple of the other things that, the parking, dimensional standards, all those things are kind of up for grabs now. And all those things are only subject to the simple majority vote. So yeah, right, we'll see what happens, but this is certainly very timely.
I have a question, Jason, for you. Are you thinking this would be for this year's fall town meeting?
I don't know, Tom. I don't know. It's
That's a
just-
tall order.
Yeah, I don't know whether we could do this. I mean, I think the state is still working on this,
The
on
regulation.
the regulations. So
Yeah.
we're like getting them hot off the presses, and for us to have everything ready and lined up by fall, I mean, I guess anything's possible, but I'd hate to do it under pressure. We don't have that kind of pressure. We got plenty of time. So better to do it right than try to rush it through.
But our normal process for zoning bylaws is at a fall town meeting, correct?
It can be in the
Yeah,
spring.
but anyway.
It isn't just a fall town meeting issue.
And everybody needs to understand that we're subject to this legislation now.
That's one thing I wanted to ask you about, Harry. The legislation is in effect, but regulations are being drafted. Are there expected to be any court challenges that would delay it?
I'm not aware of any court challenges to the legislation itself. There is discussion within this legislation as to any legal opposition brought to applications and what plaintiffs must post. They have to post a cash bond to bring a suit. So the state has thought long and hard about this and has come up with all kinds of mechanisms to frustrate people from challenging this new regulation.
With one thing that struck me that might cause some heartburn is the minimum of 10 units per acre.
Yep,
Wow.
yep. Yeah, that's a minimum.
Yeah.
Well,
So
that defines
clearly-
dense, I
that
guess.
clearly is high density, multifamily units.
Oh,
And
yeah.
we
And
come up- Yeah.
probably some vertical
Yes.
increase. And you
Yes,
can't do that in 2 stories.
right.
Okay.
Okay.
To be continued. I'm assuming, Frank, is anybody from MAPC out there? Because I did ask them to just at least listen. in.
I don't see anybody. You got Toby Zanis Porters, James Garner, and Dwight Valentine. I'm not sure if they're from there.
I guess they didn't
Yeah.
make it. Well, I'll be in touch with them to just report on what we talked about today. And obviously they've got to be on top of this because this directly affects what they're doing and certainly what they're doing for Rockport too. So, and also I guess, I'm sorry, Herm, what?
That's all right. Go ahead. I cut you
No, I
off.
was going to say, I'm a little surprised that none of the selectmen are in attendance, at least just listening, but I guess.
You got the finance committee on board.
What?
You got the
Well,
finance
yeah, but
committee.
that's, the selectmen should, Dwight, the selectmen should know what's going on with this because it will
Yeah.
directly affect the town in a significant way. So I guess
Right.
it requires that we let the selectmen know at their meeting that this is what's going on.
So
So,
Jason, just to follow up on that, I recommend that we do reach out to the Board of Selectmen and request time when we can come in and discuss
Yeah,
this
well, absolutely. Yep, for sure.
better.
That
Sooner
will be
preferred.
coming up.
So one impact that sits undefined at the moment is the half-mile radius around the train station. That affects quite a bit of the town. There has been in the past a consideration to move the train station out to the other side of Pools Lane. That would in fact move that half-mile circumference further from the center of town, which suddenly takes on a different kind of meaning. But having a map with a half-mile radius drawn on it from the center, from the train station at the current time, encompasses a lot of territory.
Yeah, it sure does.
Herm, is that a crow's fly radius or is that a walking distance?
Oh, no, I think it's crow's fly.
Okay.
That's my assumption as I read it, but that's,
Well, we'll have to wait for the regulation, whether it says crows fly or walking distance.
I guess I wonder how that, so that incorporates some of the historic district, and I wonder how this is going to intersect with historic district limitations.
Yeah. Well, that may be something that will be discussed and as the state moves on this, because that is a consideration.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, we get to define the district. And as long as it meets the requirements of the statute, we can locate it. I don't see why we can't locate it anywhere we want to.
I don't quite understand. How can we move it away from the train station?
No, I'm not saying away. I'm just saying that the definition as it stands right now is a zoning district of a reasonable size. There's the definition, right? And then within a half, if you look around the existing train station, there are various parcels. And I wasn't even thinking about heading in the direction of downtown. What's the closest historical parcel?
I don't know off the top of my head, but I think it's within a half mile of the train station for sure.
Yeah, there's a defined historic district in the town.
Right.
Yeah.
And they go, I don't know where it is exactly. My wife would know, but I don't.
It runs up to the end of Broadway.
Yeah.
I don't think it comes closer because it doesn't include Back Beach. It includes part of Front Beach. Comes
Right.
up King Street.
Okay.
But
Up to Five Corners, Herm?
Five Corners. I believe it.
I don't know.
The border is at Five Corners because it
Yeah,
comes
could
down
be.
Broadway.
Could be,
Yep.
yeah. The good thing about this that I really like is that it prevents a town from satisfying its obligation for affordable housing by putting something in the middle of nowhere.
Mhm.
Okay, here's your apartments, and like it's not
Right.
close to anything,
Right.
which towns have done. So this is good.
Right.
Let me just wrap up with one comment. As I was doing my research, they had supplied a number of examples of towns throughout the Commonwealth that had set up housing of this type. And the anecdotal information there is that the state will contribute funds towards infrastructure if a project of this type is on the drawing boards, and say it may be jeopardized because of a certain limitation, whether it be water, sewer, or both. So there is a lot of history there relative to making connections to water and sewer that the developer might otherwise find uneconomical.
Well, and then we're at those wastewater treatment capacity again, so.
Yep.
Yeah, well, that all ties into this too, right?
Right,
Of course it does, yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, so, but it's obvious that this is something that we're not going to be able to sit around for, a decade figuring out what to do. I think this is, if we get started now with this.
Oh.
That's historic district.
Thank you, Tom. Yeah, Five Corners.
If
So
we get
definitely,
started, we get started now, it'll take us a while to get this going. So,
Yep. Yep.
Okay, unless there's anything else, let's move on to Denise's item, which
I'll
is.
try to stop sharing here. I don't see my button anymore.
Yep. So I think we started discussing the housing production plan at the last meeting, and I started doing a little bit of digging and trolling through my emails from when I was on the Board of Selectmen because it sounded very familiar. And I did find a draft of an RFR that Mitch had developed relating to assessing housing adequacy in Rockport. And I revived that RFR, asked Mitch about it, and as it happens, he was about to re-release it. He gave me the opportunity to review it, so I went through and made some comments. And some of the comments relate to some of what we just heard from Harry. So this is a predicate for the housing production plan, is housing adequacy and assessing what our needs are going to be, specifically as it relates to affordable housing. And one of the things that whoever we hires will do is do an inventory of existing housing stock. And I suggested that we include in that inventory accessory buildings that could become accessory dwelling units, because certainly in Pigeon Cove, there are a lot of those. I mean, I'm just looking out my window and I can see 4 of them that could easily become housing. And definitely, while it maybe not low income, affordable housing for young people, for example, who are just starting out and don't need a big property to start. I also would like to know how much inventory we've lost to Airbnb, and I suggested that we include that in the assessment, because I think another part of our problem is that we have lost inventory to Airbnb because people can make so much money, so much more money doing that than actually renting out whatever they have available as actual homes. I've reached out to Mitch to find out, so he has gotten all my comments and edits. This is something that's in the works, and I've reached out to find out when he's going to release the RFR. I haven't gotten an answer yet, but this means that we're on the way to developing a housing production plan, which I see as very positive development. I'd like to ask MAPC to give us an estimate of what a housing production plan would cost. I realize we'd have to go out to bid on that, but I don't think that we should sit around waiting for this RFR to be completed and that process to be completed. I think we should really try to keep the momentum and keep this moving forward, especially given what we just heard from Harry in this new law.
Yeah. Well, it obviously ties in.
Yeah.
But so let me back up a little so I understand. There's actually is an RFR.
Yep.
In there, but it hasn't been finished, or what?
It kind of died on the vine a couple years ago. And when I brought it back up to Mitch, he said he did want to get it released. So I went through, made edits and comments, and it's now really up to him to release it. But it's an RFR to determine housing adequacy for affordable housing. So we know we're at what, 3.2% right now, but what do we see as our future needs? Do we have to take into account Harbor Light and what that's going to do in terms of affordable housing capacity? What do we see as what's happening with, who's moving in, who's not moving in? How do we attract younger families and that sort of thing? So that's kind of what this RFR will do. And once we have a sense of what our housing adequacy or inadequacy is, we can then go about developing a housing production plan.
So they would, this survey, which it sounds like it is, would actually look at what's there now.
Right.
And evaluate it. And
right.
then once we get that, then we would move to the next step, which would be to do a plan to create more affordable housing. Is that how it works?
Housing production plan, right. So a very specific plan with a timeline and milestones where we set out how we're going to meet our affordable housing goal.
So what has been put on the back burner, but you've now kind of reignited, is not a housing production plan. It's a survey of what's existent at this point. It's
the predicate to a housing production plan. So it's assessing what the future need, what the need is now, what the future need will be, and what the inventory is at the moment, or could be. For example, if we allowed accessory buildings to become accessory dwellings.
Okay. And then you mentioned the short-term rentals. Is there a way to capture that information?
Go on Airbnb. I mean, I've done it, and there are, not all of them are units that you could rent out to people. Some are just rooms in people's houses.
Mhm.
But there's quite a bit of inventory on Airbnb in Rockport. It's really distressing. I mean, I know it's a good thing people want to come and visit, but it takes a lot of housing off the market.
You know, I've seen that complaint in other communities, some of which have actually gone so far as to, like, you know, ban them. I mean, they've basically said, you know, no more, which there, I guess, pros and cons to that, but it for the very same reasons, is that it does, there is a perception that it does take housing off the market that would otherwise be
Right.
used for long-term rentals and is now
Yep,
being used
Year
for-
round. Yep.
Right. Okay, well, that's, so do you have to do some follow-up with that, or?
I've completed my review and my edits, and Mitch has all of that. I haven't heard back from him as to when he's going to release the RFR, but I will stay on top of that and report back at the next meeting.
Okay, good. And what about you, Harry? Is there something you need to follow up with, or?
Yeah, I mean, I've got, I'm still waiting to hear from a number of other parties, but the author of this legislation, I got to the author and person chiefly responsible for that, Chris Clutchman. I asked if she would be amenable to presenting to us at a future meeting, and she said that could be arranged.
Yeah, very good. Okay, all right, so on to item 6. This is, Frank helped me with the screen share on this, so I'm gonna try to explain this in as briefly and succinctly and as clear as I can be to explain this water protection overlay district. Water supply protection overlay district, which actually takes up, starts on page 35 and actually goes to page 45. So it's 10 pages of our zoning law. And it's when I first read it, I was kind of baffled. I didn't understand what it was doing. But since then, I've done a couple of things, and I think I can explain it and maybe explain why it should be modified, and modified in a way that is not detrimental to the town or its resources at all. The water supply, this is basically generated by the DEP, which I don't know, maybe somewhat less than 20 years ago, required that that towns institute areas of protection around their water supply. And I want to break it down into both well water supply, deep wells, and then the other one would be surface water supply, because there are different considerations with them. And well water supply, to determine what areas should be protected, it required actually a pumping test and an engineer involved. It required pumping to see where the water, if a well is pumped and with no recharge over, I think, 180 days, what areas of land does it draw from? And that required an engineer. And they called that zone 1 and zone 2. And then the surface water protection, this is again drinking water. That's what all this is about, is what's in what is called zone A. So zone A is surface water protection. You don't need an engineer to figure that one out. You just need, as the DEP representative said to me, who's in charge of this, just get someone in a high school to look at an elevation map, and you can figure out, where your watershed is just by where the elevations are and where the water is going toward the bodies of water that are supplying the town water. That would be zone A. So zone 1, zone 2, and zone A. The planning board in 2010 added to this, and I'll try to simplify this, basically a zone 3, which is not on the zoning map. You can't find it because it's not there. That a zone 3, which is an overlay onto the well water district that went out beyond the area of zone 2. And they also added to a zone B, which is a half mile from the banks of the surface water supply, and then a zone C, which was not in zone A or zone B, but still within the watershed. So I'm going to put up a map here and just tell you, first of all, the DEP doesn't care about anything but zone 1, zone 2, and zone A. They have no interest in zone 3. They have no interest in zone B or zone C. That's all they care about. Do we have the protections in our law that they require for those zones 1, zone 2, and zone A? And basically what those protections are, they have a list of uses that are prohibited in those zones. You know, just you can't have a quarry. You can't have a an auto body shop. You can't, I mean, there are a bunch of things that the DEP has identified that says, look, anything in this zone 1, zone 2, or zone A, you can't do these things in these zones. Now, let me go do a screen share and I'll try to show you. Okay, let's see. That. What am I looking at? Okay, here we go. Everyone see that screen with the green plant?
Oh,
Not yet.
Okay.
Yep.
How about
There we
now?
go.
Okay, good.
nice.
So let me just get this map up to give you a little orientation, understand what this is all about.
Is that aloe vera?
No, I don't think the leaves are thick enough.
No.
They're not
No.
spiky.
They're not.
What did you say? Was it marijuana?
No,
Aloe
Aloe vera.
Aloe vera.
One track mind.
Just kidding. Okay. Let's see. Here we go. I'll start with the zoning map. This over. Okay, everyone can see that?
Yep.
All right. I'll start down here just to kind of orient you a little bit. There are 2 deep wells in town. One, which is indicated by this circle here. This is a 400-foot protective radius around these wells. And then there's a second one, which is it's different, has a different color because it's a different designation on our zoning map. One is called zone 1 Millbrook Well Field, and the other one is zone 1 Deep Rock Well 400-foot protective area. The Millbrook Well Field only has a 250-foot protective area, and so hence that's the smaller one up here. This is the 400-foot one. So these are both kind of zone 1. This circle around them, and that's the DEP does care about those. Then you have what is called zone A, and I'll show you a little more in more detail in a moment. If I can get down. Okay, here's zone A. This is a Cape Pond, the reservoir. Here's the zone A that surrounds it, and here's a tributary that's also zone A. All right, and then when we go up here, there are 2 ponds up here, which is also, these are also zone A. All this kind of diagonal red hash marks are zone A. So that's zone A down here and zone A down up here. And there's Yeah, and zone 2 is indicated by some blue lines, which I won't get into on this map, but you can see that. All these other red lines that we have here, they're kind of all over the place. These are not, these are in these other zones, the zone A and I'm sorry, the zone B, the zone C that's within these, but like I said, the DEP doesn't really care about those, but the planning board did these reds, but the individual zones, the B and C, are not identified separately here. There's just like these red squiggly lines that go pretty much, I'd say 90% or more of these zone B and C are either in the AA residential zone, which is the most restrictive zoning in the town, or they're on town property, which you can see is the tan areas here. See, all the green is AA restrictive. You've got a little bit of the other zones, a tad bit of the residential districts in some of these corners, but I would say almost everything is AA, which is the most restrictive. So, and that's important for a reason.
Can I just ask a question?
Yeah,
Can you go back down a little bit to the first well?
yeah.
So it looks to me like part of the DPW facility is in zone A.
Right here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
That
it's pretty
doesn't
close.
I mean, from the map, it looks like there are buildings that fall into that. I don't know if that's still the case. I don't know if you know, Tom, but that doesn't seem okay.
Yeah, I don't know exactly, in terms of the survey, how close this is.
Yeah.
But no, don't forget, this has been the zone A has been approved by the DEP. They reviewed this. They said it was fine. Let me show you some other.
Jason, before you go on, I'm observing that the solid red lines appear to be the whole watershed area.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's what they are, but they don't say whether it's zone B or zone C or zone 3.
The dash lines might be a different protection area, but I'm pretty sure the solid red is the watershed.
I'm talking about the solid red lines that go around here.
That lines up just with the watershed that I'm looking at on a different map.
Yeah. Let me see the.
Was there a vote on the watershed?
No, there wasn't a vote anymore. There was just it was a zoning map, and it was a zone, and they voted on it at the town meeting. They didn't. I've looked at the minutes of the town meeting, and it was a zoning amendment. That's how they voted on it. There was no technical person who plotted the watershed. As the DEP employees said, you could figure out where the watershed is simply by getting a map that shows the elevations and contours, and you can figure out where the watershed is just from that. And that's apparently what was done. It was not, it wasn't done by a consultant. There was no study done. It was just drawn on the map. But let me just get you some other maps, which I think will show it a lot more clearly than this one. Hold on one second. All right, I'm going to go to, let's see. Okay, here we go.
In case anybody's interested, I got my power back. I
Oh,
don't know
good.
how I lost it during the time I was supposed to present.
Of
But I
course.
want to thank Denise for helping me out. That was immensely beneficial.
So
Thank you.
here's a very good map. This is again from the town, Rockport Department of Public Works. Here's your zone A. Here's the well. Okay. This would be zone 1. Here is zone A around the various bodies of water. And this is zone 2. So here's your other, I think this is your other well up here. So zone 2, meaning that this well draws from this area. Zone 2, and zone A. All right, and zone A and zone A. These are actually in Gloucester. But these are this is how this tributary feeds the Cape Pond Reservoir here. So that's, when you look at this, this is what matters to the DEP. And basically what they say is you can't do all these nasty things in these zones. Well, guess what? The underlying zoning, the AA and even the residential zoning, prevent anybody from doing those nasty things in these zones also. I mean, in other words, it's kind of like belt and suspenders, because you can't do this stuff in zone A. You can't do it in the zoning either. All they have is, it's all residential and it's all, 2-acre lots. And then you have this zone here. And that's what the DEP cares about. Now let's go to the next slide here.
Denise, you were asking about the new DPW facility location.
Yeah.
It's essentially on the same site, so it hasn't moved, but it was not within that shaded area.
Oh, good. It does seem that our only gas station in town is located in that protected area as well.
I think it's out. I think that's out of. Denise.
It didn't go all the way to the roadway, I didn't think.
Open, okay.
It's kinda
I'd be
hard to
curious to know where the tanks are.
Okay, here we go.
Don't ask. How old are they?
Yeah, exactly, right?
They've been replaced. They're plastic tanks.
Oh, are they? That's good to know, Herm.
Hey, Frank, can I enlarge this at all, or is it?
Yeah, enlarge it if you can.
I'm gonna try. Okay, there we go.
Yeah, if you pinch your fingers on the pad, you should, kind of extend them out. You should be able to zoom
I'm
in.
it on my own screen, but it's not.
Herm, I need a favor.
Let me try it again. I'm sorry, folks. I'm kind of new at this. Okay, let me try it again. I'm sorry.
Maybe if you right click on it, that might open up the dialog box.
Yeah, are you in Chrome or if?
Oh.
I
Whoops.
just got rid of it. Let me try it again. I'm sorry. Why didn't you just say that? Okay, here we go. There we go. I think I got it bigger now. There we go. Yeah.
Oh, good.
So, okay, so here, this shows zone B, okay? And the DEP, that's zone A, and this is zone 2 is here. And basically,
That's different. That shows it going all the way up to this, up to Main
Yeah.
Street.
this is, you have to get the legends right here, but this is, according to this legend, zone 2. And according to this legend, this is zone 2 also, right? But that doesn't make a lot of sense though, does it?
But now Zone B includes the DPW.
This is zone
facility.
B. I don't know why zone B is in here, to tell you the truth. Because this should actually be zone A.
Zone A.
Yeah, but let me go to another map then. Will explain something. Okay, here we go. This is zone C here. This is DEP approved zone 2, and this is DEP approved zone 1. Zone 2. And the solid pink is zone C. Make sense?
Mhm.
Okay. So these are, so the let me put this first one back up on the screen because I think that's the best one for us to look at. Zone A, there we go. All right, these are the zones that have to be protected as per the DEP. Now, there are, let me just say that the way this law is written is that the Zoning Board of Appeals is the permitting authority, all right? And what's really odd is that, and I shared this with Eric Hutchins, who was part of this when they did it, was that there are a bunch of things that aren't allowed in AA zoning or the just plain old residential zoning that are allowed in zones B and C. Zone, for example, you can have removal of soil, loam, sand, and gravel are allowed I won't talk about that because that's a little too technical right now, but in zone B and C, dry cleaning facilities and wellhead protection areas, zone 2 are allowed. Dry cleaning facilities are protected under the AA or residential district zones. They're not allowed. So our underlying zoning doesn't allow them.
Yeah.
The ordinance allows, the bylaw allows sand quarry and gravel operations in zone B and C. Sand and gravel operations are prohibited in the underlying zone AA and residential district zones. So again, our underlying zoning is stronger than this zone B and C that was created in 2010. The Watershed Protection Overlay District allows commercial car washes and commercial outdoor washing of vehicles in zones B, C, 2, and 3. But they are also prohibited in the underlying AA and residential district zones. The Watershed Protection Overlay District allows in zone B and C wholesale distribution and warehousing of commercial packaged liquid petroleum products, including class A, B, and C motor fuels. That's allowed in B and C, which is supposed to protect the watershed.
Yeah.
These activities are prohibited in the underlying AA and residential district zones. The Watershed Protection Overlay District allows motor vehicle repair operations in zone 2, but this is prohibited in the underlying AA and residential district zones. And finally, the Watershed Overlay Protection District allows in zones B, C, and 2 the disposal of animal remains and operations of cemeteries, human and animal, and mausoleums. This is prohibited in the underlying AA and residential district zones. But so in other words, why would we need a zone B and C when we already have underlying zoning that prohibits activities that are even more extensive than
Yeah.
zones B and C?
Yeah.
It creates confusion, and
Yeah.
it creates an out by someone saying, well, look, your zoning, allows it in this, and that should take precedent over the other zone. Then the other thing, which is actually not lawful, and this was confirmed by the DEP, that the town's Watershed Protection Overlay District allows the ZBA the authority. The ZBA now can exempt the property from being included in zone 2, zone A, zone B, or zone C. If the property owner provides sufficient hydrogeological evidence, and they can say, well, that property shouldn't have been in zone 2, zone A, zone B, or zone C. Well, that may be fine for zone B and C because the DEP doesn't care about those, but zone 2 and zone A, how can the ZBA exempt a property from a zone that the DEP has already created? It can't be done. Only the DEP can do that. And it also has to be approved at a town meeting. So this is a really flawed provision, again, that's in this overlay district zoning. And my suggestion would be to, let's get back to basics here. Let's get back to what's allowed, what's prohibited by the DEP in the zone 1, zone 2, and zone A. And our zoning is sufficiently strong. In fact, it's stronger than zones B and C to protect the land in the areas around that. And that's kind of where, right at this point, unless someone shows me something that may be contrary to it, that's kind of where my recommendation is heading with this very convoluted, difficult to read provision is to really go back to what the DEP prohibits and let our zoning take care of what's prohibited in the other areas. So
Would that then eliminate the opportunity for the ZBA to override?
yes, if
Yeah.
you take this provision out, if you take out this provision that allows the ZBA to override it, the ZBA cannot override the zoning in zones A or residential zone. It can't allow uses that are not allowed in those districts, period, paragraph.
Okay, so I'm all in favor then.
Yeah, plus I don't think the ZBA should be the permitting authority under this law anyway. I
No,
think it should be the
no.
planning board.
Well, you got to wonder cui bono, right?
Yeah, right. So, yeah, so that's what I'm looking at now. If I just wanted to explain it to everybody. I'm sorry it took up so much time, but
No,
it
that was really very helpful. Thank you for doing all that work.
you're welcome.
Jason, I have a question.
Yeah,
Are you aware of any instances where the ZBA has acted?
I am not, Harry, aware of that. But the fact that this is there.
No, I understand that.
No,
I
no,
totally understand that.
I know. The answer to your question is no, I'm not. I'm not aware of that. I think probably because anybody trying to read this bylaw would, be pretty, it's fairly confusing. And I've, after talking with, Joe Parisi, who was very helpful, and talking with the DEP and talking with Eric and then really getting these maps from the DEP, it really helped explain what was going on here. And, it was well-intentioned, but I think what happened is I don't think when this was drafted that anybody really kind of cross-referenced between what they were putting in their bylaw for the overlay district and what actually was already existent in the underlying zoning. And once you cross-reference them, you realize, wow, the underlying zoning is way more protective than what we're writing here. So let's keep it. And
Which
not
one?
create-
Which one came first?
I think the underlying zoning came first because this wasn't adopted until 2010.
So we just neglected to change it after getting overridden.
Well, it's like there were irreconcilable inconsistencies between the underlying zoning and what was allowed by the Water Overlay Protection District. And all it does is create confusion. So one of these days someone's going to need to figure all this out because, this is in SRAA zones and these are not by the way, the B and C does not prevent development. And these are not protected by any conservation easements. So, the DEP all the DEP cares about is the uses that they list are not uses that are in the zones that they cover. And that's all they care about. But they're already prohibited anyway, for the most part. So, okay, that's all I have. Just a little show and tell here. And get
So
out of it.
how do we move forward to effectuate what you just said?
I think what we need to do is I'm going to talk with MAPC. And I think we need to have the overlay protection district because it's required by the DEP. But I think it can be pared down quite a bit. And to comply with what the DEP requires. And that should be sufficient to give all the protection that we need from these uses in these areas. And by the way, you know, I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but we do have, you know, stormwater rules and regulations that we need, which also will help immensely in terms of protecting the watershed, because it will require, you know, stormwater management, which right now we really don't have. Okay,
Makes
that's all I have. Unless anybody has any more questions, let's move on to item 7 on the agenda, which is maybe we need to set some priorities. We've got a lot of stuff going on here. And you know, anybody have any ideas? We got,
Can you send out a list of all those things that you see as on our table, and then have us contemplate what we think might be a suitable order and submit that back to you?
yeah, well, actually, Herm, if you look at the agenda, those items are listed. Item 7, and I've listed the items that I think we're working on here. A, B, C, D, and E. They're all, unless there's something else that someone wants to add to that, I believe those are the things that we're working on right now. So,
Well, I was looking at the other agenda which came out, which no longer listed those. But anyway,
what?
that's why I wasn't focusing on it.
Okay. Well, I think you should have, you know, it should be on the website.
Yeah, no, I have it. It's just that
Okay, you were
there was a later edition of the agenda that was sent out,
Okay, well,
which didn't list
so
those.
anyway, you know, does anybody want to have any thoughts on any of these?
Well, some of these are going to require a great deal of work. And some of them, I think maybe not so much. It sounds to me like what you just described, Jason, the revision of the water supply protection district, could that be relatively straightforward to get done?
I think it could. Yeah, I think it could. And what I did say too with this is that I really think we need to have, I need to have Joe Parisi on board with this. Because if someone gets up there and says, oh, this water supply protection district, we're going to lose, you know, makes it seem like we're losing protection, it's not going to pass. People have to understand that. They need to understand that what we're trying to do here is actually eliminate conflicting provisions and actually keep our zoning strong. So I think I can do that. And, you know, and I think I can convince, you know, the people who are, lack of a better word, influencers with this, including Joe and maybe some others, that this is the best way to go. So.
Did I hear correctly or incorrectly that Joe is leaving?
I haven't heard that.
Well, check on it.
Yeah, no, he never mentioned it to me, but.
Have you heard that, Herm?
I did, yes.
Wow, okay.
Well, then I guess that would change what I have to do. Joe isn't here.
Jim Gardner's on the call.
I was just gonna say. Yeah.
Okay, well, we'll find out during our comment period, maybe. So, okay. I could do that pretty easily. I can do it easily, Denise. I don't think it's a huge priority, but it needs to be done, and it's relatively easy to be done.
Yeah, I guess I was just thinking of like things that we could knock off quickly.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, to my mind, the things, and I mean, we're obviously the zoning revisions that's already underway. I think sewer and stormwater are really important. And we've talked a lot about both of those. So to my mind, those rise to a pretty high level of priority.
So if you had to number these items, which could you do
Well,
that?
A is already underway, so
Yeah.
it's already happening.
So that would be the one, that would probably be one.
One, yeah. And then, I don't know, sewer and stormwater, I think they're, I guess 2 and 3, but to me, they're both really important.
Okay.
And I think, getting a housing production plan underway is also important. And it doesn't mean we can't be doing that simultaneously. We have to wait for that housing needs assessment to be completed first anyway. So,
Yeah, that ought not to be delayed.
right. So I can, what I can do is, do you want me to reach out to MAPC about that, Jason?
About the housing production plan?
Yeah,
Yeah, sure, you can do that. I mean, I don't know what their capabilities are. If they,
well, they've
Wonder-
done, I've looked at their website, they have done housing production plans. So maybe what I can do is ask them for a sample RFR, and also get an estimate of, what those generally cost. And I wonder if any of the money that's available through the 40A reg change would be available to us to help develop a housing production plan.
Yeah,
My
that would-
understanding is that it is available.
Okay, so I'll follow up on that.
okay, good. All right, anybody else have any thoughts about priorities or? No? Okay. So the one is, like you said, one is obvious, the zoning revisions. And I think rolled into that should be the, the housing choice zoning.
Right.
And hopefully the MAPC will be able to do that without saying, well, wait a second, we didn't bargain for this, I don't really understand the procurement process, how it seems to be very cumbersome here. I don't know if that's the way, if we're already working with a consultant on one thing, if we can expand the scope of what we want to do without going out to, an RFR, and go through that whole process all over again. That takes a lot of time. But
My experience with the state procurement laws is that you could probably expand the scope to accommodate the 40A changes.
yeah,
If we were to ask them to do something that, isn't really tangential or wasn't originally contemplated, like a housing production plan, then we would have to go out to bid.
yeah. But the 40A stuff, I think, they're
Yeah.
already kind of talking about that. So.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, all right. And the revision of the water supply protection district, that can kind of go on its own course. I can start with that. And I don't need MAPC. I wouldn't ask them to try to do that because it would just, it's so, I've learned so much about it already that I think I could do it without it's really almost like a cut and paste
Yeah.
situation. It's not
Yeah.
even, I'm not like inventing any new provisions. It's just taking what the DEP says you have to have in your regs and putting them in, and that's pretty much it. So. Subdivision rules and regulations, those really do need to be redone. That's where our, oh, okay, yeah. What else needs to be redone is our open space residential development. And I think that's in our bylaw, but that needs to be made as of right. Right now, it's not. And that's one of the things that in the initiative, the governor's initiative, that's one of the things that's covered is that the open space housing residential development is as of right. So it will be done without, it's not a very complicated process. It doesn't need permission from the planning board. Someone can come in and say, fine, this is what I want to do. You know, I want to, instead of doing a cookie cutter development, I want to do, you know, houses and a lot of open space. They should be able to do that without needing permission to do that from a board. So subdivision rules and regulations need to be redone, but that's another, I know MAPC or any other consultant, MAPC would balk at trying to do that under their current contract. So that would have to be a separate contract to do that. So I would put that down lower on the list because of that. Okay.
Do we have budget for these things that would require consultants, or are there grants available? Where do we stand on funding?
The answer to your first question is no. Answer to your second is, are there grants available? I don't know, but if someone wants to find out, that would be terrific. And what was the last question?
That was about grants, I thought.
Right. So I've found that Chris Clutchman is a wealth of information. She knows a lot, but she also steered me back in the direction of MAPC. So, but in terms of available grant money, I believe there is a fair amount of assistance available to us to facilitate improvements to our zoning ordinance.
How do we capture that information, Harry?
So specifically, I mean, if all we have to do, I think, is I can reach out to Chris. I've been communicating with her, and I mean, it was fairly clearly stated within the legislation for a housing choice. But I was amazed at how much capital is available, what it's been used for in the past, and you know, the continuance of the support of these activities at the state level. There's money available.
Maybe Chris could help us figure out how to tap into that.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, you circulated a list, a partial list of
Right.
communities that have gotten a good amount of, you know, good chunks of money through grants.
Yep.
For water to, if they had water problems with their construction of an affordable housing development, they got money to pay for some of that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there's capital available for helping with the improvement of our own bylaws and developing some of these. You know, I mean, it's been made clear to us that we need to embark on a plan of cleaning up our bylaws, and as a result of that, we're going to end up with a new zoning district. We can tie a lot of other things into that as well. That's my view.
Okay, well.
I'll follow up with Chris.
Okay, great.
Okay. All right. Well, let's keep on moving, and that's all we can do is just, you know, incrementally push forward on each one of these areas that we've been working on, and, you know, maybe we'll get somewhere in a year. So, all right, 8. I put 8 on there because just so you know, I sent everybody a copy of the amendments to the proposed amendments to the couple of bylaws dealing with the size of properties, and if I can get it up here. Yeah, it's the amendment to section 1C of the zoning bylaws of the town of Rockport. And one had to do with gross floor area, the definition, and the other one had to do with um, buildings, large houses with accessory structures. And this was an amendment that was done, Herm, when did we did this over a year ago, didn't we? And then it
Oh,
got,
when we drew it up, it never came before town meeting.
right, it never came
Right.
before town meeting
Right.
because of COVID. It got
It got bounced last fall.
bounced out of, off the agenda, actually even before that, maybe.
It may have been June or April,
Yeah,
May.
because I remember Mitch basically really pared down the warrant for the post, COVID agenda. And this was one of the things that got thrown off the warrant. But now it's back on.
Right.
And basically, I don't, Herm, do you want to talk about?
Well, talk a little bit about it. I mean, it addresses confusion. You proposed an aggregated gross area definition, which has been adopted. And that, I am assuming, is going to resolve some of the lingering questions that Amy still has with regard to what the applicant, in a sense, must comply with. In other words, the total square footage on a piece of property less than 2 acres should be not only the new construction, but also the existing construction. So that, I think, is covered by the aggregated gross floor area. But I don't think you have asked her specifically whether or not that addresses her continuing concern.
Well, this has been pretty well vetted, Herm. I think she looked at this before it got on the warrant. And basically what she was saying, she gave an opinion. And it's in, those various emails that I sent to everyone. I don't think you need to read them, but basically and this was based on what I think it was one of the properties on Marmion there was a
51
house there.
Right.
Yeah, there was a house.
Right.
A large house that was already existent.
Well, no, it had been torn down and rebuilt.
Rebuilt, right, okay. And then they put up an accessory structure, but it was not, it didn't meet the setback for the square footage that was involved. So the question was, do you consider the accessory structure square footage or with the house square footage? You just look at the house square footage. And Amy said that the way the law was written is you just look at the house square footage and you don't look at the accessory structure that's built subsequent to the house. So therefore, they were able to put it within 20 feet of the side lot line, as opposed to the 25 feet of the side lot line that we thought they should have put it in. So
Right.
And that was the interpretation that the building inspector was giving to this law also, which meant that basically if you had a house built and then you had a accessory structure built later, you don't consider the aggregate of the square footages of the two structures. You just look at the house square footage. And that was not what was intended. So
No,
that's why.
It isn't intended, but what puzzles me, continuing to puzzle me, is that Amy and Paul are still looking at the existing guidelines. They're not looking at the wording associated with aggregated gross square.
Yeah,
footage.
because that's the way, this hasn't been adopted yet. So-
No, so therefore they're talking about, we are proposing a change that should eliminate their concerns. They're talking about the existing language, which won't apply.
Well, yeah, if you look at the emails and back and forth, that was before this was drafted, I believe. And we wanted her opinion because the planning board had one opinion and Paul Orlando had a different opinion.
Right.
And we wanted to know where she came down, and she came down in favor of Paul Orlando's opinion. And that wasn't what was intended.
Right.
When this bylaw was drafted, the original bylaw. So hence the planning board came up with this proposed amendment, which is finally going to be on the warrant for this May meeting.
Right.
So this is going to be voted on. It's going to require the 2/3 majority, but it seems to me that it would be something that I think the people would be in favor of, because that was really what was intended in the first place. I just put it on just to let those planning board members, because Herm and I were both on the board at the time, but I don't believe any of you other members were there, just to know what, when you see it on the warrant, you'll go, well, what's this about? So
Right.
now you'll know. That's all.
Okay,
I
the
wasn't
only
on the
other,
board.
the only other feature on that comes up is this separation between garage and house. I remain uncertain as to whether or not the garage must be apart from a house. There are garages and houses that are constructed with the garage attached to the house.
Right.
So when somebody comes along and says there must be 15 feet between the garage and the house, that's when they're separated. But if they adopt the combined construction, so to speak, then all of a sudden the 15 feet goes away and the side setback becomes a non-issue because it's the total complex that you're looking at. But if you're trying to duck under 6,000 square feet, and which has happened in this particular case, the new structure was under 6,000 square feet. Therefore, it never came before the planning board for site plan review. If the garage were attached, it would have. So it was a way of ducking what they didn't want. They did not want the planning board to review it under site plan review. And that's
Right.
what this is all about, in my mind.
Yeah, well, good. I mean, it'll plug that hole, so to speak.
Right.
Good.
Anyway, that's it on that. And so item 9, which is member items. This is just anything else someone has to bring before the board members, that is. Anybody else have anything?
Just to clarify what we referred to earlier about the DPW facility, it appears that with it, the general contract bids having come in, they are now about 2 million over budget.
Yeah, I understood it was about 20%.
Yeah, they had,
Of the
they
original.
had, they had 10 million odd remaining after all the, what they call those, soft costs had been removed from the 12 odd budget. So yeah, it's about 20%. And now they're working on redesigning.
Well, you know, I just read in the Wall Street Journal a day or two ago that from last year to this year, that the cost of materials has increased over 100%.
Yeah.
Double.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, you know, it's just totally unforeseen.
Crazy. Yep.
That's happened, and it's driven up construction costs that for anybody who hasn't put off their projects, you know.
We missed our chance to build last year during the recession.
Yes.
Right.
It wasn't ready for bid, so here we are.
Yeah.
That's what happens, yeah.
The
Any
other member,
items?
the other member item I want to bring up is something I had circulated about exterior lighting. I discovered that Nantucket has bylaws about this, and they have a lighting enforcement officer. And unfortunately, they still have problems with enforcement. And I'm not sure exactly what it is, but I suspect it's a similar thing with the enforcement officer not enforcing.
Well, enforcement's only good as the enforcement officer, you know, whether he's whether he's got a separate title or he's the, you know, building inspector, same thing.
Yeah.
So there's one other point that you brought to our attention, which I think we should pay attention to. And that's the structure that is being planned for 6 Gull Cove Lane. And
Yeah,
there's a hearing on the 23rd of March, 11 a.m. Zoom conference. And they're asking to do a number of things in trying to construct this residence down there as they seemingly fill land and use land that's within the floodplain.
It's also the coastal bank.
Right, coastal bank. So it's definitely something that we should pay attention to see how the state is going to react to this. Anyway.
yeah. Also, Herm, I did talk with the engineer involved with this project. The owner also has a lawsuit pending against the town based on the actions of the Conservation Commission.
Wow.
And also an
Wow.
and also a separate administrative appeal this is what I understood him to say, of the decision of the Conservation Commission. We, I believe, at some point will likely have the ability to discuss the access to this lot and whether it's actually suitable for a, access. That may become before our board. Yeah, we haven't gotten there yet, but just keep that in mind.
Right. But the hearing should be interesting.
Yeah, no, it should be. Yep.
That raises the question, are there any zoning bylaws that could have prohibited something that we don't think should happen?
Explain that again.
Well, you're saying that this proposed project is doing things that it sounds like we would not approve, but we have no way.
We would have questions about it, and as did the Conservation Commission. So,
But well, would there be stronger bylaw provisions that would make it moot because it clearly couldn't be done?
I mean,
Well,
are
that
there,
would be-
Could there be? I know
Could
there
there
aren't.
well, there probably
Really?
could be.
yeah,
That would be a ZBA issue though, not a planning board issue. And they, would probably apply for waivers or special permits and, I'll leave it at that.
Well, assuming they still can do special permits. We were saying that they could only do variances
well, as of when, Tom?
as of when we changed the bylaws.
Oh, okay, you're saying when the, yeah.
I'm
but-
looking forward. Looking back, we've lost.
Oh, okay, all right, I understand, all right, yeah, right.
We don't know the size of this structure yet. All we know is the size of the property.
I think when they were before the Conservation Commission, they did they present a plan, Laura? I know they were talking about like a giant concrete wall. What do you call those? Retaining
Support.
wall,
Okay, yeah.
support, how many?
9.
9 feet tall. Yeah, so it's gonna be quite lovely.
But the size of the house might trigger the need for them to come before the planning board. We
I
don't
also
know.
believe
I don't believe the residential structure was much more than 3,500 square feet.
Okay.
Well, anyway, there's a chance that we could end up with it, so just keep that in mind. Any other member items? Okay, no other member items. Public comment. There's this public comment period.
Toby,
some of them trivial. You were speaking about the Millbrook well. That's an overburden well, not a deep rock well. Different sort of animal. The water pools underground but above the ledge. Jason Shaw spoke about the nasty things that you wish to prevent in the watershed areas, but there was no mention of the railroad, which perennially is a nasty thing in the watershed, going right through that area by Loop Pond and the overburden well. If you want a history of that going back and back and back, you would talk to Eric Hutchins. He can give you all the grim details. You were looking for setting priorities and picking up on where you left off the house on Gull Cove Lane. I would hope that you would add to that the revision of Section 8, Roman numeral 8, which is the coastal floodplain zone. What's written there is totally unworkable, designed to fail, unfair to property owners, and fails to protect the environment as well. You speak of a housing production plan. I'm puzzled about who would adopt it and what the process would be. There was no mention at all of the Affordable Housing Trust, which we did 4 years ago. Linda Sanders put a huge effort into that. The Board of Selectmen said it was a marvelous thing. The Planning Board also ditto, a marvelous thing, and it's never been activated. The shell of it is there. It could and should work. I would hope that since you're so concerned now about housing, that you would get onto that and try and get the Board of Selectmen on board to activate the Housing Trust. Thank you.
It's a separate, there are reasons for that to be, and that's a separate conversation. I can fill you in on it, but there's a reason that it wasn't pursued.
I heard the reasons Sarah Wilkinson gave me when I, for the fourth or fifth time, reproached them, and they struck me as silly and trivial. What she said was that it was appropriate to urban areas and that it was outdated. And
No, that's not the reason. The reason is that the town was pursuing the same structure that is in place up in Maine and on Martha's Vineyard, which is not a town-funded trust. The town was actually pursuing a different approach. So
Really,
that's,
There were two going on at the same time. The
Right.
administrator at the time did have a housing trust that Toby is referring to. The
yes.
other effort was a separate effort that you were part of, I was a part of.
Right.
But it died on the vine for reasons that I was never told, so.
In any case, we're familiar with it, Toby.
And welcome back.
Where'd he
Thank you.
go?
He had not been participating in meetings for a long time.
Oh,
so.
Listen, your lips are moving. You're muted.
Jason, there you are.
Okay,
All right, there you are. Yep.
we couldn't end the meeting then. Any other public comment?
I don't
Okay,
see any.
no other-
anybody else.
No other public comment? Somebody's got
Nope,
family
no
project.
hands.
Okay. Hey, I just have one thing to say before we move to adjourn. Frank, I want to thank Frank Taramina very much for helping me set up this screen share. He shared some equipment with me and some technical know-how. I wouldn't have been able to do it. Frank, thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem.
Really appreciate it. So, okay, I'll make, anybody want to make a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second,
Our moves, Tom, second. All in favor, roll call vote, Herm,
Aye.
aye.
Denise,
Aye.
somebody's got their family in the background. Harry,
Aye.
and I'll vote to adjourn also. Motion carries unanimously. Meeting is adjourned till next time, folks, and we'll be in touch in the meantime.
Stay safe,
Aye.
all.
Take care.
Thank you. Good night, everyone. Thanks again.
night.
Good night, everybody.